Hi, this is Somshakar from Maths Guru Academy. If you are watching the video for the first time, please subscribe to my channel and press the bell icon to get the notifications of my latest videos. Today we are going to learn the chapter 3 of 10th standard, which is pair of linear equation in two variables. So first of all, what is linear equation? The equation of the form ax plus b is equal to 0 is called linear equation, right? So linear equation means equation having highest power 1, that one we call it as linear equation, right? So the standard form of linear equation is ax plus b is equal to 0 and this a should not be equal to 0. For example, 2x plus 3 is equal to 0. So here the highest power is 1, right? So if the highest power is 1, then that equation we call it as linear equation. So it is in the form of ax plus b is equal to 0, right? So value of a is 2 and the value of b is 3, right? So it is in the form of ax plus b is equal to 0. What happens if this a becomes 0? So check it out now. 0 into x plus 3 is equal to 0. So in place of a I have written 0, in place of b I have written 3. So 0 into anything, it will become 0 itself, right? So 0 plus 3 is equal to 0. So in this case we don't have any variable here, right? So if we don't have any variable, then can we call it is a linear equation? Obviously not. So that's why this a should not be equal to 0. If a will be equal to 0, then the equation cannot be called as linear equation as there is no variable. Getting? Next, linear equation in two variables. So here we talked about linear equation in only one variable, right? So we have only one type of variable here. So here we are talking about linear equation in two variables. The equation of the form ax plus by plus c is equal to 0. So here we have two variables, right? X and y, we have two variables. So that's why we call it as linear equation in two variables. Linear equation means highest power 1, right? So for x also highest power 1, for y variable also highest power is 1. So it is linear equation and it has two variables, right? So that's why we call it as linear equation in two variables where a, b, c are real numbers. So this value of a, b, c may be any real numbers and a and b should not be equal to 0. So this a value and this b value must not be equal to 0. So what happens if a and b become 0? If a becomes 0, then a into x will become 0, right? Then we will left out with only by plus c is equal to 0. That means only one type of variable. Then we cannot say linear equation in two variables, right? So and again in the same way b must not be equal to 0. If b becomes 0, then 0 into y, this will become 0. Then we are left out with only one type of variable, right? So example for linear equation in two variables, 2x plus 3y plus 7 is equal to 0. So this is example for linear equation in two variables. Here we have two variables, right? X and y, and in place of a we have written 2, that is nothing but value of a is 2. In place of b we have written 3, that is value of b is 3, and in place of c we have written 7, that means the value of c is 7. Next, pair of linear equation in two variables. So pair means 2, right? So we are talking about linear equations. So pair of linear equations means two linear equations. So it's the equation of the form ax plus by plus c1 is equal to 0. This is the standard form of first equation, and a2x plus b2y plus c2 is equal to 0. This is standard form of one more equation. So see here we are talking about two types of variable. In both the equations we have two types of variables, right? X and y, and here also x and y. So if first equation having variables x and y, then second equation must also have the same variables, nothing but x and y. So this cannot be a and b or c and d. Getting? So this equation cannot be any other variable except x and y. So if first equation having x and y as a variable, then second equation must also have same variables. Then this a1 is a coefficient of x, b1 is a coefficient of y, c1 is constant, right? Next, a2 is coefficient of x here, b2 is coefficient of y, and c2 is constant. So this is for the second equation. So where a1, b1, c1, a2, b2, c2 be any real numbers. So these a1, b1, c1, a2, b2, c2 can be any numbers, and a1, b1, a2, b2 must not be equal to 0. As I said, this a1, b1 and a2, b2 become 0, then we cannot say equation in two variables, right? So example for pair of linear equations in two variables. So we'll take two examples. 5x plus 3y plus 7 is equal to 0, and one more 10x plus 5y minus 12 is equal to 0, right? So we have written two equations here. So here in both the equations variables are same, x and y are the variables. So and this 5 is a coefficient of x in the first equation, right? And this 3 is a coefficient of y. And here 10 is a coefficient of x in the second equation, 5 is a coefficient of y in the second equation, and these two are constants, right? So in place of a1 we have 5 here, in place of b1 we have 3 here, in place of c1 we have 7. Next, in place of a2 we have 10, in place of b2 we have 5, in place of c2 we have minus 12. So this is an example for pair of linear equations in two variables. So standard form is a1x plus b1y plus c1 is equal to 0, and a2x plus b2y plus c2 is equal to 0. Next, solution of pair of linear equations in two variables. That means any pair of linear equations in two variables can be solved by three methods. So the first method is graphical method, second method is substitution method, and the last method is elimination method. In this chapter we are going to study all the three methods, that is graphical method, substitution method and elimination method of solving pair of linear equations in two variables in detail. Next, graphical method of solving pair of linear equations in two variables. So in the next video I will show how to solve by graphical method. Before that we should know what are the graphs we will get by solving graphical method. So we will get three types of graph. So what is the standard form of pair of linear equations in two variables? a1x plus b1y plus c1 is equal to 0, a2x plus b2y plus c2 is equal to 0. So this a1, b1, c1, a2, b2, c2 are called coefficients, right? So and x and y are called variables. Before the solving pair of linear equations only, we can say what are the graph we will get by solving those equations. So we will get three types of graph by comparing the ratios, nothing but by comparing a1, a2, b1, b2, c1, c2, we can identify or we can judge what will be the graph for that linear equations they have given. So see here, by comparing the ratios, if we get a1 by a2 not equal to b1 by b2, if this is the case, then we will get intersecting lines. You know what is intersecting lines. So suppose if this is a line, if one more line cuts that line, then this one we call it as intersecting lines, right? So how many intersecting point we have here? 1 point, right? So this is the solution for that equations. So exactly we have only one solution, or also we call it as unique solution. Since intersecting lines have only one intersecting point, we have only one solutions. So if this is the case, that is a1 by a2 not equal to b1 by b2, if we compare the ratios and if we get a1 by a2 not equal to b1 by b2, then the graph will be intersecting lines. So for example, we will take two equations here. 2x plus 4y plus 6 is equal to 0, and 4x plus 5y plus 8 is equal to 0. So here compare the ratios. So this is a1, right? So see here, in the first equation, coefficient of x we call it as a1, coefficient of y we call it as b1, and c1 is a constant, right? So here a1 by a2 means 2 and 4, right? So 2 by 4 next is equal to b1 by b2 means b1 is 4 and b2 means 5, right? So see here, in the first equation coefficient of y means b1, second equation coefficient of y means b2. So in this equation coefficient of b1 y means 4, that is nothing but b1, right? 4 divided by, here in the denominator we have to write b2, b2 means 5. So see here, 2 ones are 2, 2s are. What we got here, 1 by 2 is equal to 4 by 5. Whether LHS is equal to RHS? No, LHS is not equal to RHS. That means A1 by A2 not equal to B1 by B2 form we got. So that's why in this case we will get intersecting lines. Getting? If we compare the ratios, nothing but coefficients, if we get A1 by A2 not equal to B1 by B2 form, then the graph will be intersecting lines. So for intersecting lines, how many solutions we have? One solution. Since intersecting lines have only one intersecting point, we have one solution, or also we call it as unique solution. Next, second one, if we compare the ratios and we get A1 by A2 is equal to B1 by B2 is equal to C1 by C2. If we compare the coefficients, if we get all the coefficients are equal, nothing but A1 by A2, B1 by B2, C1 by C2 are equal, then what will be the graph? We will get coincident lines. What is coincident line? If we have the graph like this for the first equation, the second equation also will get one straight line, right? If that straight line pass on this first line itself, then this graph we call it as coincident lines. That means in simple words, if one line passes on another line, then that graph we call it as coincident lines. For this graph we have infinitely many solutions, right? So second line passes on first line, so we have many solutions here. So we have infinitely many solutions. For example, 2x plus 4y plus 6 is equal to 0, 4x plus 8y plus 12 is equal to 0. So compare the ratios here. A1 by A2 means 2 by 4, right? 2 by 4 is equal to B1 by B2 means 4 and 8, right? 4 by 8 is equal to C1 by C2 means 6 and 12, right? 6 divided by 12. So see here, 2 1s are 2, 2 2s are 4, 4 1s are 2, 4 2s are 8, 6 1s are 2, 6 2s are 12. So 1 by 2 is equal to 1 by 2 is equal to 1 by 2. So here A1 by A2 is equal to B1 by B2 is equal to C1 by C2 form we got. So that means for this equation, what is the graph we will get? Coincident lines. So how many solutions we have? Many solutions. So then the last point is, if we compare the ratios and we get A1 by A2 is equal to B1 by B2 not equal to C1 by C2. If we get in this form, then what will be the graph for that equations? Parallel lines. Parallel lines means, so this is one line. If one more line is parallel to first line, then that one we call it as parallel lines. That means two lines will never intersect each other. So that one we call it as parallel lines, right? If both the lines will never intersect each other, that one we call it as parallel lines. If the lines do not intersect each other means, do we have any intersecting point there? No. That means we have no solutions. So for example, 3x plus 5y minus 12 is equal to 0. 6x plus 10y minus 10 is equal to 0. So compare the ratios here. A1 by A2 means 3 by 6, right? 3 by 6 is equal to B1 by B2 means 5 by 10, right? Again C1 by C2 means minus 12 by minus 10. Right? So here 3 1s are 3 2s are, 5 1s are 5 2s are, minus minus get cancelled, 2 6 are 12, 2 5s are 10. That means we have got 1 by 2 is equal to 1 by 2 is not equal to 6 by 5, right? So 1 by 2 is equal to 1 by 2, but this 1 by 2 is not equal to 6 by 5. So that means the given equations is in the form A1 by A2, B1 by B2 is not equal to C1 by C2. So this is in the form of like this, right? So for the equation, for these equations, what will be the graph we will get? Parallel lines. Parallel lines means there will be no intersecting points. If there will no intersecting point, how many solutions we have? We have no solutions. Getting? So and one more thing, if we have the solutions, it may be one more solution or it may be many solutions, then that pair of linear equations we call it as consistent. That means these two equations we call it as consistent. If we have the solutions, then we call it as consistent. So here in this equation we don't have any solution, that's why we call it as inconsistent. This pair of linear equations we call it as inconsistent, and these two we call it as consistent. So these two equations we call it as consistent. Thank you.